It wasn't that hard to find you, Toretto.
Wasn't hiding.
How's the life of the retired international criminal?
I like it here. It's quiet. Nice weather. And no extradition. So what are you doing here, cop?
Last Tuesday, a team of highly coordinated drivers took down an entire military convoy in Russia.
I don't do cold weather.
I know it wasn't you. But you're gonna help me catch the team responsible. And you ain't gonna need that.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 180 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host Becca and as always joined by Chris and Dave. How are you both?
One.
Good evening, folks. You've just, for those in various parts of the world, because we have listeners from everywhere, you've missed both a darts and a Bullseye reference.
I didn't even watch them.
Well, darts is obviously a pub
no, darts,
game.
Obviously, but yeah, I think I've seen Bullseye. But I haven't watched it
Bullseye,
regularly.
that was Bully's prize board. Chris was good. Yeah.
But who's going to win Bully's special prize? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. You don't get anything in this game for two in a bed.
Nope.
What sort
But
of
there
rubbish
are three
prizes
of us,
did we
so
have
that's
back in the
fine.
day?
Sorry?
They'd always have like rubbish prizes, wouldn't they? What sort of rubbish prizes would you win?
It would be like a very cheap microwave or something.
It's very glamorous looking table furniture or like a garden furniture or something. You look at it, you just look absolutely
It's
fucking
plastic.
awful.
It's just plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you think so? You're not sure because this was like the 80s. It could have actually been quite expensive and fancy back then. So you kind of
But
like
now it looks very cheap and plasticky.
You know where they were pushing the envelope when there was like a cordless portable television.
Ooh.
Or handheld one.
But was it black and white?
Yeah.
But
I think we had one of those.
It's funny because you watch old game shows now, and then like the things like camcorders, it seems like a really good prize. People get really excited for it. But in the age of iPhones, where the camcorders
we've all got a video camera on.
Yeah,
they're all kind of irrelevant. It's like if someone
Back
gave
then,
me
it
a
was like
camcorder
cutting
now,
edge.
I'd be like, thanks, I'll never use it because I've got one and I can fit it in my pocket.
Take that attitude, Chris. All of the prizes are out of date. It's not like when you watch Bullseye and the prize is like a holiday at the end. You go, well, that's no good to me. It was 1986. The tickets would have
Can't go there.
expired.
Well, now we can't go anywhere.
Yugoslavia doesn't even exist. The
It
twat.
doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, but more often than not, it was a speedboat.
Or some kind of like a Ford Cortina or some sort of
Yeah,
car like that.
they're the random cars. They're thinking like there were two mates who go to the pub together. And you're thinking, like, how do they share that? Like,
It's more the fact that they live in like Coventry and they've won a speedboat.
The two don't go together.
I know. I mean, you could travel, I suppose, but
I mean, you just sell it, wouldn't you?
you sell it exactly.
Sell it for millions.
Yeah, get Jim Bowen to like autograph it.
I'll push it up a little bit.
Whereas if you win the holiday, you can't get him to autograph Spain and flog that, can you?
No, you can invite him along. Come on, Jim. On you go.
So anyway, episode
Moving on.
180. And
Edging closer to episode 200, but I think 180 is quite a milestone.
I have no opinion on that. I tried really hard, but no, I don't have an opinion.
We'll wait till we get to episode 200, and then we'll have I don't know, a party
Yes. Well,
of some kind.
well, we're 5 years old this year as well. So
No,
you know we are.
I know.
You were there
I was here.
when we started.
I was here at Inception.
Yeah. So yeah, we're 5 at the end of August.
Yes.
So we'll do some kind of anniversary thing. I don't know, either 5 years or episode 200 or episode 250 or something.
We'll have a discussion behind the scenes and figure out what we're going to do, and then let you other people know.
Yeah.
Because we don't know.
We don't know at all.
We might put it out to the listeners and say, look, what should we do?
So anyway, I hope you're all enjoying this as much as we are. What are we doing tonight, Becca?
Right, moving along. We are now on Fast and Furious 6, aka Fast 6. I've got a lot of information. Please stay attention.
Keep
Starring.
us informed.
No, I'm not going to go through the entire cast list. Obviously, Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, Dwayne Johnson, Gal Gadot, Tyrese Gibson, Michelle Rodriguez, Jordan Brewster, Ludacris, Sun Kang, Luke Evans, and Tyra Lindhart from the last series of Danish, Swedish, Nordic noir series, The Bridge, and also cameos from Rita Ora
one's
and
that?
Jason Statham.
Which one's the one from...
It was she like the female baddie?
what was she called? The actress?
Oh no, it's a guy.
Is it? Which one?
Oh,
Say
sorry.
the name again.
Oh, Tyra Lindhart. I can't pronounce his first name.
Right.
But he's,
I'm trying to look for who he is, because I thought... I don't even remember him in the fucking film.
Oh no, it's only because I watched The Bridge and he was in it in the last
He was
series.
the one at the car...
Yeah, who
the
the two-
garage that the two women go to.
Yeah,
like,
they chat up.
Chat up.
And I was like, I know that face.
Yeah. When I thought you meant the blonde woman in it from the Bad Guys.
Oh, I missed her out. Sorry.
Yeah.
I just realised I missed her out. Apologies.
And I can never remember her name in the show, so I've gone with Urban Galadriel.
Yeah, she's a bit like that, isn't she?
Female Brian Walker, as Rowan put it.
Oh,
That's
what
the
a
one.
person.
Yeah, sorry, I missed her out.
That was quite a romantic scene, actually.
I do like how they each have their opposite, or the corresponding gang members, and that sounds really bad, but they have their corresponding numbers, don't they?
It's like that shot in Shaun of the Dead, isn't it?
Yeah, it is pretty much.
But there you go.
It's exactly the same.
So, yeah, that's the
Anyway,
cast. What about the rest of
Starring
it?
today, obviously. Yeah, original music by Lucas Vidal, script by Chris Morgan, directed by Justin Lin, and released in 2013.
This Lucas Vidal, I've noticed it's not Brian Tyler this week, and it will be
No.
Brian Tyler again next week. And for me, this score is a step down. Only
He had a week off.
doesn't stand out at all. And I went and looked what else this guy had produced, and whilst everything out there's got its fans, he hasn't done a lot that's very high profile. Certainly in my sort of viewing history or anything. And yeah, the score's not bad. It's just not good either. It doesn't stand out. We've had better scores for the last couple of weeks. I think the writers are the same, but this is the fourth consecutive entry for Justin Lin. It'll be his last until, well, next year now, we assume, with Fast 9, which has already been filmed.
It was due to come out now, wasn't it? Or
It was due out end of May, so yeah, within the last week or so, probably. What day are we on? I don't know what the date in May was. I have a feeling it might have been due out last Friday. So yeah, we've missed that. It's in the can. They're all good. It's just going to be this strange era in Hollywood where you'll have films that were half shot before and after, half shot after. So you'll have actors looking very slightly different from scene to scene because they didn't manage to match their weights exactly and things like that. And then you'll have people promoting films that, like, I mean, Daniel Craig puts weight on between Bond films, so he will be like,
He kind of walks up and looks different.
he's going to look rather different promoting it. But yeah, no, it's in the can, Fast 9, and all it means is there'll be a delay of Fast 10 because they haven't shot that yet. They weren't going to be shot quite back to back, but there was going to be like a fairly short gap and then straight into filming. So we should still get 2 consecutive years for the last 2 films. And I think they're both going to be Justin Lin. And there's some talk of Dwayne Johnson being in Part 10. He's not in Part 9. But I think that's more of a conversation for next week and the week after when we talk around the sort of egos around Part 8 and why The Rock's not in it.
is that because there was talk of him being in this one, you think, maybe, and then like it kind of evolved into another film, and you think maybe you sort of bring him back in the next one, or think it's just all rumours at this point?
Oh, I think it's all rumours at this point. I think it's rumours, but I think there's been sort of little signs of a rapprochement. I don't know how much of it is all a strategy and we're sort of being played. But I do get the impression there was some kind of falling out at the top, and then there were articles that came out over their sort of egos. And I'll read a little bit into it before we do next week's recording, but I have read these things before, and certainly there was talk about Vin Diesel's attitude and timekeeping and things like that. And we know that the fights are now being very deliberately choreographed, so there's no losers and things like that. But we'll come to all that. We're still in the sweet spot on this at this point, though. For me, this is the first one I ever saw, which anyone who's listened to the first 4-5 shows in this series will know. I got dragged would be an exaggeration, but I got asked to go and watch this film with someone who we do tend to do this, me and a friend of mine. It's like, I want to watch it. Yeah, all right then. When we just go and we don't really question each other's choices. He wanted to see Fast 6. He was winding me up about it because he knew it wasn't kind of my cup of tea, or I didn't presume it was going to be. Went in to see it, really, really enjoyed it for all its limitations, and some of the limitations were quite noticeable after last week. This is a step down in some ways, but I had a really, really good time with it. Saw it a couple of times, got the box set, saw the rest that we've just covered. So this is sort of my jumping on part for the series. What about you guys?
I think I might have seen this at the cinema. I don't have a particular memory, unfortunately. I can't really say much there, I'm afraid. Chris, you go.
Well, you don't remember seeing it at the cinema?
I think I saw it last week's, and then I remember, like, obviously there's the scene, obviously where there's a reveal quite near the end, which we'll talk about, and obviously there's a bit in the trailer where he's going, they got a tank, and I remember that bit stands out like a sore thumb. But I might have seen this at the cinema, and then I haven't seen it since. It's kind of really sort of the sort of middle films that's all for me, definitely.
They heavily promoted this in that I was seeing the trailer
really
for quite a long time.
I think I probably had a bit of Fast and Furious fatigue.
Watching the film today, there are a few shots and lines of dialogue that I remember that stood out because they were in the trailer. Where he finds Dom at the start of the film and he says, "I wasn't hiding." That was in the trailer.
Yeah.
That's the deal. Take it or leave it. That's in the trailer.
I think his time as money lines might be in the trailer as well, perhaps.
Could be. Yeah. This is. I guess the difference is for last week, location, but also colour palette. You don't see much daylight till about 90 minutes into the film. Most of this film is set at night. Most of it, not all of it. So
yeah, it's a bit different this time around.
It feels a little different from last week's film. That way, aside from I would certainly say it's even more down the path of them slipping into their sort of trademarked series roles, in that, like, Ludacris and Tyrese are with each other most of the time, excepting one major scene, and they really play up the comedic value and the running jokes. I think the dialogue's not as good this week. The dialogue is weaker. There's an awful lot more, in, like, when you look at something like Die Another Day, every line of, like, Gustav's dialogue, it's only by being on the edge we know who we really are and things like that. This film's got a lot of people talking to each other in those sort of weird platitudes.
Yeah, it's a very lot family focused.
There's the family thing is just starting to become like, all right, it's really starting here. It's still not as much as in future weeks, but the comedy's a little goofier. The dialogue's not quite as good. It's funnier, but it's still in the sweet spot. I still had a pretty good time with it. It's the action's still very, very good. It's soapy. I mean, we're going to get to it with our next series. I mean, we haven't confirmed definitely, but I think we're doing Spider-Man next. And the weakest of the original trilogy has like an amnesia storyline in it, and so does this. And that is like something out of a bad soap opera. You'd almost expect her to come back having had plastic surgery, played by a different actress or something.
Played by somebody else.
The runway at the end we'll get to. That's really silly. There are other things in the plot, like the whole Elena thing. And
so you're telling me in Fast 9, like, we're gonna like explain the old hand thing by, like, him finding him in the shower, and then just like, oh, I just had the most terrible dream.
Or they'll lazily redo the same thing, that it's like it's been a plot all along, or he's had amnesia, or he was a wanted man and couldn't risk the rest of his crew, or I don't know. They'll come up with something. We'll talk about it a little bit when we get to Hobbs and Shaw, because I think Hobbs and Shaw left a whole plot point completely unexplained. And I remember saying to Chris, I wonder if that's Han. but we'll come to that in a couple of weeks' time. It probably isn't, but it was just at the time.
Maybe.
I leave that unexplained, and it could be that, because everything's tying into everything now. We have another funny point about like career development, which we'll get to with the Elena character. We've also got what the hell is the jurisdiction of the FBI?
Yeah, what's going on there?
A federal bureau. I mean, there's a bit of overlap with Homeland Security, but basically they're there to protect. They operate domestically. That's the whole point.
Yeah, hold on a minute.
So why they've suddenly picked up like Interpol type?
I don't know. I think it's just an excuse.
I don't know. The whole reasoning behind getting his crew involved is just funny. The respect amongst sort of thieves, if you like. The moment Dom's crew's disrespected, Luke, tells them to show a bit more respect.
Honor among thieves.
There's lots to laugh at about this film. It's one of those films that at the time I sort of liked despite itself. But having bought into the series and what it is now, revisiting it today was a lot of fun, but it's not as good as last week's film. It may be as enjoyable, but there's a little bit more fat and padding on it, or pattern fadding, one of the two. There's a little bit more padding on it. There's one scene in particular I remember thinking the film's losing its way now because this is going on too long, and they are having to make a lot of narrative leaps. And I'm not talking like every week has had its problems with physics. I mean, there's a scene with Dom and Letty towards the end of the film where, frankly, her inside should be liquefied and his back broken, but I'm all right with that. That's just the leap you make with this series. But there are narrative things in the series, in this film, where I thought, why did they go down that path? Because that actually leads nowhere, or there's no point. But overall, I'm being positive. I'm just now sure, having seen 5 so recently, that Fast 5 is a better film than this. What about you guys?
Chris?
All right. Well, I first remember this. I mean, this was pushed like really heavily because it was like that.
It was in front of. It seemed to be in front of every film.
Well, not only that, it wasn't just the trailer. You had like pretty much like the whole tank chase scene, but pretty much as a whole shown before Iron Man 3 and other such films.
I didn't know that. I went to see Iron Man 3, but I don't remember that. Unless you saw it in IMAX or something.
No, it was actually on regular. Oh, it was on Cineworld, so I don't know if it was about other.
It could have been chain dependent, I suppose.
But yeah, it was like attached to that, and you literally saw pretty much up to the point where you see both Vin Diesel and what's her name?
Letty.
Letty.
Michelle.
Both Michelle, flying in the air, just as about to like. Just about and how are they going to get out of this one?
It's like, well, there's only one way this is ending. He's going to grasp her out of the air.
Yeah, but the way you saw it, it just looked absolutely ridiculous. And he didn't
quit doing that now, because if you think about it, that would have been. Sorry, what film were you saying it was in front of? Iron Man.
It was definitely in front of Iron Man 3. I'm not sure if it was in front of like other films. But it was definitely
Iron Man 3 was spring of 2013, so maybe a month or so before this was released. But the previous year, you'd had The Dark Knight Rises shown in front of something, and I think might have been, I don't know what that was, but Ghost Protocol had something in front of it. It was a thing for a while, wasn't it? Let's see the first 7 minutes, or something like that. They seem to have quit doing that now. They being cinema chains and studios generally.
Yeah, because it kind of ruins it, really.
It might make a comeback now. The film industry's in such difficulty. They're going to have to work very hard at promoting things and try and G up enthusiasm. Because, I mean, I was reading today AMC are likely to go into administration. That's America's biggest chain. So
and they own Odeon as well, don't they?
They do own Odeon, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned.
Well, they go into administration, someone else buys it, calls it something else. It's not. We might lose some cinemas, but I think the majority will survive. It's more about current ownership and the uncertainty for the people that work there. And also, if it does go into administration, will they get TP'd over, or will they kind of get them not TP'd over? But... Will you find where there's an area where you've got a choice might one of the cinemas close because they say we're not risking going up against a view when it's just
No.
the road or whatever.
And you've
Or
got little
they
independent
might-
cinemas as well.
Some of it may be timing as well. If they go into administration this summer, might somebody say, well, I'd be interested in buying a cinema chain, but I don't know if I want it now. It's something
No, exactly.
it's something I'd buy next year when it's recovering. So
Sure. Well, there's
they
talk
may
of
have-
it trying to, some of the chains reopening a date in July, but how they're going to do it, maybe in checkerboard pattern, removing some seats with screens in between. I don't know.
That's the point. I mean, if you get that, we all know people who will go back, but
We'll be doing it in November, hopefully.
but it's got to be a high percentage of what was already going. Otherwise, the business will fail. I mean, you look at. I mean, I always remember reading. I think this was more about when football clubs were failing, and stuff like that. That there is a wisdom in business that says your salary bill should not exceed 70% of turnover.
No.
Well, if your staff bill is 70% of turnover and your revenue drops to 50% of turnover, you're going to fail, aren't you? It's as simple as that. So what they might do is slow the decline. But I can see why they're desperate to open, but I can't see. I mean, the local View down here made a reasonably big loss last year, and that was before all this. So I think
exactly.
I think they're in trouble, whatever happens. But a lot of businesses go into administration and get bought out and rebranded or whatever, or venture capitalists buy them and try and do something with it for a few years. So I don't know.
That's probably what's going to happen. So I'm just trying to think of, like for example, the Odeon near us in Salisbury. I mean, I think it's like it's a really really old building to start with. It's either like it's grade 1 and grade 2 listed. Lots of history locally as well. And it's just one of those things where you kind of think, obviously for the skeleton staff that they were already operating on, to maintain a really old building like that, I think that there are going to be losses. And then I think the next one is probably sort of like a picture house chain. And then Cineworld, I think, the next nearest ones, I think, is like cities like Southampton and Bournemouth and Basingstoke and nearby. And I just think it is, my concern is for the staff really at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's a lot of uncertainty coming up, and furlough's going to end at some point, and we'll just have to see, I suppose. But there was a spell in the early 2000s, not that long after the financial crisis, funnily enough, talking of difficult times, where they seemed to use this as a tool. And so you were saying that you'd seen the tank chase before you saw the film, pretty much, then, Chris?
Yeah, and given that the trailer kind of like sort of spoiled the whole film anyway, you kind of felt like you saw a large majority of the film before you even saw it. Though, I was quite surprised when I did watch it how much despite all that, I really did enjoy my time with it. Which in a way kind of just sort of, well, it just speaks to how the film has done something right. I mean, for it to have, despite the fact that we've only seen this crew come together in one movie, there's a sense of like they've been together for like a lot longer than that.
Definitely, definitely. They've slipped into their comfortable roles now, and you see elements of this in future. It's a bit like Letty has a fight with like an MMA fighter. Well, she's going to do the same next week. This whole Tej and Roman as a sort of double act that really, really hit towards the end of the last film, and it's developed even further here. Yeah, they're all kind of in their stereotypical roles now. The only thing, there's nothing to say that wouldn't have carried on for a few more films had it been for, obviously, this is the last proper appearance, if you like, of Paul Walker. Paul Walker's character makes a full appearance in next week's film, but obviously, when we talk about that film, a lot of it was filmed around his absence because he died during the filming of it. So this was released in something like May 2013, and Paul Walker died 6 months later. Because Fast 7 was supposed to follow this quite quickly. It was meant to come out the following year, so it got delayed. So they were filming this. There was a break for something, and he was driving in Was it LA he died in?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
He was driving down or he was being driven down the street there, and they were doing
Yeah.
a very, very fast speed and lost the car. But yeah, there you go.
It's very sad.
Yeah. So you enjoyed it basically?
Yeah, I watched it at least a couple of times in the cinema. Because it's just it just sort of ticked all the boxes for me. It was ridiculous, but it was fun.
Yeah, I'm going to make a ton of fun of it, but I'm not. That's not a knock on it in its way.
Yeah, I think I think I've sort of said before. I think there's something really genuine in like the camaraderie of it with the cast. There is you do feel that, and you do feel like there's a warmth to it, and the action's great. It really does go for full spectacle.
There is something, like I say, there's something a little bit soapy about it, but there's nothing wrong with liking that stuff.
No.
It's some of those ridiculous soaps in the 80s and stuff, real silly plot twists in it, and plastic surgery and Back from the Dead and stuff like that, and millions watched them and enjoyed them and knew they were a bit daft, but genuinely liked them, and that's the same with this, really.
Yeah.
There are lines in it where, and jokes and themes where I think, and I don't mean to patronise, but it's the only way I can put it. There are bits in this film where I think it's playing to a mixed ability group. It is there for like everybody. But yeah, it's solidly really, really enjoyable. But it's one of those things that the plot hangs together in that one thing leads to another, that leads to another, that leads to another, and that's all logical. But there are little leaps in it where you just go, that's really silly. Like the runway, like what do the FBI do, like Elena's career trajectory, like her phantom pregnancy. I'll come on to that at the end of the film. Well, it's not in this film, but spoiler alert for anyone watching along with us, I don't think it's giving too much away. I'll try not to ruin too much of it. But Elena has a kid at some point during this series, and I don't know when, because I started watching 7 earlier because I've got this thing about watching the very start of the next film just to see how they're linking together. And there's definitely a time jump because Brian O'Connor's kid is a toddler in that, and I don't think she's had the kid by then. And then there's nothing to the next film, and suddenly there's a child. So yeah, there's lots of things you have to try not to think about. But from scene to scene, it's absolutely fine, and it's amusing. There's lots of silly running jokes in it. It's homoerotic as fuck. It's really funny, and the action's good. This is still really, really strong this week.
Yeah, we start to sort of see like the I suppose it gets a bit more expendably with the cast next week, but we start having like we basically tease Jason Statham at the end, which
yeah, I mean, next week you've got effectively 2 Shaw brothers. You've got what's it called? You've got a new character. I think it's next week. The female character whose name escapes me joins.
Yeah, the hacker that no one really cares about.
Same skill set as Tej, but there you go.
Yeah.
But that's what happens when you don't. Well, you can't plan a series. There's no way you could have planned like 8 or 9 entries from 2001, and someone's going to die in the 6th and stuff. I mean, it's not really a criticism, but it's a bit like Mission Impossible. Benji has the same skill set as Luther. If you planned 6 films from the very start, you wouldn't plan that. But sometimes these things happen organically, that you have someone there who isn't in the next film and someone replaces him, and a bit later on you're like, right, let's have them both, It does get soapier, the cast get bigger. The thought I had as well watching this is Helen Mirren's a fan of this series.
Yeah.
And what made me smile watching this was Helen Mirren is sat in the cinema watching this and she doesn't know she's his mum. Incredible.
That's a plot twist.
It's the funny thing about a series developing along these lines. She sat watching this character and it's like, Helen, that's your son, So
Did you know you're related?
yeah, they didn't even know at this point.
No.
So yeah, we'll get
Well,
Helen Mirren down the line.
Mentioning her as well. I think some of these scenes, especially around London, did they film it for? Is either Red or Red 2? Either of those films. When she stars, she's in.
Yeah, Red 2 filmed.
Red 2. That was it. I knew it was one of the Red films.
Yeah, the first
So,
Red
yeah.
a few years before this.
So yeah, slight Helen Mirren collection there.
Mm. Yeah, but she was interviewed about stuff she hadn't done that would like to have got involved with, and she said, I think they said something to her like, "Is there a series of films you'd ever be interested in?" I suppose the prompt around this period would have been, might she have said Marvel or something? And she said, "I'd love to be in a film." Yeah, she said, I'd want to drive in it though. Well, which obviously she doesn't, but yeah, we'll come to it in a future week. I did watch the start of 7 tonight, and it's got a really strong start. That film, it does have a very, very strong sort of opening few scenes. But we'll come to that next week. So what did you make of this, Becca?
Yeah, I think I probably had a bit of Fast and Furious fatigue upon release, as I think my only abiding memory was the "they got a tank" line. But no, just watching it this evening, not my favourite, but no, still had lots of fun with it though. It kind of did. It didn't kind of whip along, obviously, as quickly as last week, for example.
Is that what it is? Pacing.
I just
When
kind of thought
you don't like it as much. Is it pacing?
Yeah, it's just in terms of the pacing, it could be a bit whippier. It could have moved along a little bit. But yeah, I would agree with you, Dave, in that the dialogue was a little bit weaker. But for me, I think the action is still as strong, if not stronger. What's his name?
There's another little subtle Italian job reference in the action, isn't there? Did you notice it on the highway?
Yeah, it's good spotted. That's well spotted, definitely.
Formation red, white, and blue cars.
That's it. Yeah, I was trying to think of what's that film. Oh yeah, Italian Job. Definitely. There's lots of other callbacks to sort of to classic car chases.
Yeah.
So as we've had before, like Bullet, Steve McQueen, things like that, for example. And this week definitely we get Italian Job sort of references. And there was sort of like also some 70s classic car chases.
Do you know the scene where I thought this isn't? I don't mean to talk over you, but now we're on the subject of pacing. I'm interested where that first hit you, because I can tell you the exact scene where I thought, right, this is dragging. It's when he has his first face to face with Shaw.
Yeah, I kind of thought, but for me it kind of hit around perhaps like the hour, just after an hour mark. I don't know. I know that was a bit strange, but I think it was just due to the fact that how I've been feeling today generally. But I would say around that sort of mark as well. But I mean, that's kind of like my main problem with it really. Otherwise, dialogue's probably not as good, but visuals still good. Like for example, the tank chase at the end, was going to be heavily CGI, but as ever, director Justin Lin was kind of like, no, we've got to do this in camera, we've got to do it for real. And then obviously little tweaks made in post production here and there by all the VFX companies. And I kind of thought, like some of the effects, I kind of thought, like last week, for example, like towards the start of the film, you can kind of tell a little bit of this, but like this time around, obviously, it looks not that it looked bad last time, but this time it looked a lot tighter, especially given the film is a few years old now.
Yeah.
But no, hugely enjoyable. Love seeing all the cameo roles at the end, even though it's a little bit, obviously, there's a bit of retconning going on as well with regards to Letty and also Stace. I've got written here in big letters.
I'm sure that highway,
there's lots to like.
That highway they drive on with the tank chase, I'm sure it is real, because I've been to a few different parts of the States and I've not been there, not been that, Actually, no, that was still Spain, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, it was Spain. I've not been wherever that road is.
I don't have either, actually.
But I was getting a big Matrix Reloaded vibe off it. And I think the Matrix Reloaded, there's a big car chase in that film that's CG as fuck, but we know that. But they built like a quarter of a mile, half a mile. They built something. They built a certain length of mock highway to basically do this car chase on. And I kept getting that vibe off this. I don't know if it's because the amount of traffic was fairly light. I don't know if it's because just by definition motorways in this country are just way busy, just generally. There was just something like they had locked off a massive section for filming and then not populated it quite enough. So there's something about that sequence that keeps taking me out. The caveat is I could go there if it is indeed a real road, and it might look exactly like this. I don't know what the relative traffic is
I'm
like.
not quite sure where it is, because it says on the IMDb.com, says filming locations Tenerife, obviously Canary Islands. Let's have a look. Whereas other English and European locations, Punta de Silva on Gran Canaria. What else? OK Park, obviously Shepperton, Longcross, as we know. Bovington's generally Canary Islands, so yeah, generally around the Canaries. I think Tenerife.
Yeah.
Been to Ibiza?
I've been to Ibiza, Tenerife. I've been to Mallorca, but that's not Canaries. That's
No, I've been to the Balearics, for example.
Balearics,
But Mallorca, Menorca. But I think the closest I've been to Canaries is probably like Ibiza, for example.
Yeah. Okay. Okay then. Shall we discuss this film sequentially?
Sure. So we
Why
kind
not?
of start where we left off with a chase. Though it's not really a chase, though.
It's not. It looks like it's the race we left at the end of 5, and it's not. They're having a bit of a race to get there first, but they're getting to the hospital for the birth of Brian's first kid.
Or they were on a chase that long, a race that long that it escalated. The pregnancy escalated really quickly.
Yeah, well, they did look in the stylized credits of the last film. It did look like they were sort of driving all over the world. They might have gone via Paris or something, because she was heavily pregnant, and now she's I thought this was quite funny, because we'll cut back to before he goes in a minute. But as he walks in the room, they're like, "You're just in time," and she seems to be in a convent or something. It's all nuns. But he runs in.
Nunnery.
But from the camera angle, I thought, oh, he's missed it. She's holding the baby. Then I realised it was just her left breast. So I can't tell the difference between a tit and a baby.
Oh dear.
They get there first. Brian does win this time. He does get there first. It's quite a nice little... There's some nice shots of them going around those sort of top roads, though, and stuff. He gets there just in time. You're going to be a great father, because I'll be there to kick your ass if you're not. Dom is with Elena now still, with kind of where he was at the end of the last film. And then we cut into the montage, which really sticks in my mind. Providing it gets via YouTube, it will be the trailer music for this show.
I think it's the credits as well. I think it's in the post credits as well, I'm sure.
What, towards the end of the film? This moment? Yeah. I just really like the sequence. It's very, very nicely edited together. It gives it a bit of a feel. It actually whipped up like a bit of anticipation in me, whereas you think the first time I went in, I wasn't bothered about seeing this. Yeah. I wasn't resenting seeing it. I've played that up far too much, really. But I was like, whatever, And they just put a bit of energy behind it. And it was actually quite a nice little primer. I mean, I didn't understand all the references. And all these years on, I'd forgotten some of them. So over the last 4 or 5 weeks, I've been seeing the constituent parts of this sequence and going, oh, that's where it goes from. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's basically like a recap of, like, what's gone before.
Yeah, it's quite effective as well, because it's only just over 2 minutes. They edit the song down, because if you go and look up the video for the song, you can find this version on YouTube, but you can also find the longer one, and they've edited it down. It's a bit like they do with the Bond films, where you get like a 4.5 minute song, and when you watch it in the film, it's 3 minutes. And they managed to cut something out without really losing anything, and they've done that here. But yeah, it's just a quick run the way. It's basically homoeroticism a primer. It takes you right through all the shots from the film, right the way through from the first film to basically the bank heist at the end of the film, and then the walking towards the camera on the beach looking hard.
Not at all gay.
Yeah, I like a man to be had. yeah, all right.
Pardon?
It's from the Scousers Go to That London. Okay, so what's the first scene afterwards? We just get the first scene is... do we cut straight back to Dom and that? And the baby's birth?
No, it's Moscow.
Oh, of course it is.
Yeah, because like obviously
the-
this just picked up where like Tom Cruise was doing his stuff in Ghost Protocol, and
Yeah, you can imagine him walk, because he does walk out of the Kremlin and just put on, reverse his coat and put some glasses on and stuff, doesn't he? I'd love it if he just walked. They just got a cameo of him just wandering past like Dwayne, and Dwayne doesn't notice. Yeah. What is the FBI doing?
it's not the FBI though, is it? It's the DSS or something.
I thought he was an FBI agent.
No,
This is like DSS or something, doesn't it? Which made me laugh.
Wasn't the FBI in the last film?
no.
Right.
I'm getting confused with all these three-letter acronyms.
That's a main plank of my humour for this show. Fucked. So, bollocks.
Bugger. Oh dear.
And it doesn't exist.
Oh, don't. There's plenty of talk of family in there to poke fun at, so you're fine.
No, I'll be absolutely fine. But one of the major planks of this film's fucking stupid is what's the FBI doing? It's me that's stupid. I didn't notice it wasn't the fucking FBI. All right, so
Well, it could be some organisation who shouldn't be there. So
it's actually, it started off in 1916 as the Bureau of Secret Intelligence.
history lesson, people.
There's a
Pay attention. There's a fun fact for you.
agency's most visible activity is providing security to the U.S. Secretary of State, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. So it's security overseas to, okay, fair enough. Whether they would act in this role, I'm not sure, but it's a full-fledged law enforcement agency.
That works overseas.
Agency employs 2,400. Right, okay. Fair enough. DSS agents, that's like Social Security here.
Yeah, that's what made me laugh.
They're basically saying whether you can have your unemployment payments.
That kind of reminds me. There's the Dan Brown movie. Not movie, but like the movie that's based on the book by Dan Brown, Inferno. With Tom Hanks.
Oh yes, of course.
And and they have like the World Health Organization as this like, almost like this like CIA type thing trying to protect, and they're showing up. I'm with the World Health Organization, and they're like they're armed, and I'm like, how?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Put the tissue down. Right, so he gets there and someone's like ploughed a car or something into the side of the wall, and we find out.
Yeah, it's all played totally for laughs, because like, how did that get there? We see, we meet up, we get introduced straight away to his new team member, Riley, played by
Gina Carano, who was
Gina Carano. I thought she was in this film.
Yeah. But no, she was a professional fighter at one point, Gina Carano, and a very successful one.
Yeah.
Just look her up a minute. But yeah, she obviously made a full sort of move to. She was.
Steven Soderbergh sort of made a film called Haywire.
Haywire. That was
I think that's
what
she's most famous for as well. So that's a good film.
Well, she has a good fight with what's his name, Fassbender.
Yeah, that's a really good scene in the film.
Mixed martial artist she was, and relatively successful. She didn't fight for that long. She did lose a sort of final fight, but okay. So she's fine. She doesn't make a massive impression. I mean, you've just given her name. I don't think I ever really. I know what it is because I looked it up, but I don't think I really ever particularly registered it in the film. But she's Elena's replacement, because Elena is now with Dom.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely no impediment for her rejoining later on.
It's that odd thing, because given that where we left Elena, she was with Hobbs, so you think natural progression is Hobbs to hire her, but we don't. We're literally in the next scene where Dom and Co leave.
No, but she was working with Hobbs in the last film.
Yeah.
She leaves to go to Dom, so she's basically now a fugitive. And at the end of the film, she rejoins. It reminded me of that line in Fools and Horses when, like, Slater returned, and it was like, "You back in the police now, Roy?" And then just after he's been in prison, it's like, so that's a bit silly. But yeah, he takes one look at this building in Moscow, and he's like, "There's only one team that could have done this."
Yeah, so we get the, it kind of like sets up as a mock kind of like Toretto. Only Toretto could do this. And
Yes,
you kind
but
of like hop.
I don't think he says Shaw to start with, does he? He says
No.
one team. Carano's got him time basically in an interview room with one of the team.
Yeah.
And when we see the back of the head, you think it's Vin Diesel, don't you?
Yeah, because it's basically just a big ball. It's Grant Mitchell, basically.
Yeah. And again, there's no rules in this universe. He just kicks the shit out of him and destroys the room.
I do like how they play it, though, because it's
Yeah,
like,
I do.
isn't that legal? It's like, yep. You're going to tell him now.
Yeah.
Do you want to go in and tell him? No.
Yeah.
So it turns out to be Owen Shaw's team, not Dominic Toretto's team. But it's clearly a rogue nation. It's clearly a syndicate version or whatever.
Yeah.
It is pretty much kind of Rogue Nation, this film, isn't it?
Yeah. A little bit, yeah. So what next? He's got to track them down, or he tracks down Dom to start with.
Yes.
Dom's doing a barbecue or so. Oh, he's in bed. He's in bed with Chris Hemsworth's wife.
Yeah, Mrs. Chris Hemsworth.
Naked. There's implied nudity there.
He's definitely not gay.
He's seen Mrs. Hemsworth's boobs. Well, you say he's not gay. This group have dispersed all over the world, and yet he's made sure he only lives down the road from Brian. He's not. They're not cutting the cords
And his
yet.
sister, so...
Yeah, but she's just incidental. When we see his sister, she's wearing quite a low cut dress, and you can see she's insecure. She's struggling to keep Brian's attention.
Gaze into those big blue eyes. I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, we see he turns up and he shows him the photo of Letty, and says, because he says, well, there's no extradition there, so he's got no need to hide. That's the line from the trailer. I wasn't hiding. Well, there's no need, no extradition there. He says, I'm not here to arrest you. I'm here or extradite you. I'm here because I need your help. And in fact, you're going to beg me to let you. Yeah. And it's because he's got a photo of Letty, who's been photographed in and amongst Shaw's crew. And then we catch up with where everyone is, don't we?
Yeah, Roman's on a plane. He's like, he's got some honeys. He's going off somewhere.
It's Iron Man 1, basically.
It's pretty much.
Give it a bit longer, and they'd be lap dancing or pole dancing. So he's on a plane. Tej is somewhere. I don't know where he is, but he's wiring like a cash machine to give out money.
Yeah.
And he's got like a fast car. I thought they were in Tokyo, but they talk about Tokyo like it's a new place for her to be going towards the end of the film. They're in the Far East somewhere because she's eating Far East Asian food, but I'm not sure where.
It's probably either Korea or China or somewhere like that. But my guess is probably Korea.
Shanghai or something because she's eating. What are those Chinese dumplings called? She's eating dim sum or something like that. Yeah. So. Okay, so they're there. And what else? Brian's basically with his kid. Not far from Dom, just in case,
Yeah.
Because she's just had a baby. She's probably not very sexually active for a couple of months, so Dom could be...
TMI.
Dom could be filling in for him.
Literally.
Literally filling in, yeah.
Literally.
So I was talk about he's not feeling like home, Oh, we're together, we got the beers, you've got the barbecue, but it's just not right.
Yeah, because he goes to see Brian, they have a long chat, don't they? And it's just... And he actually says to him, I used to do stuff like this when I was a cop. He's playing with you, but there's no way they're not going to pursue it. And this was the bit that made me laugh the first time I see it, because... he's trying. He said it will just be me, and Hobbs says to him, "Just you's not good enough, not for this crew." And when he's talking to Brian, you sort of sense he doesn't want to get Brian involved. But there's none of the people in this are particularly bad actors, But there was the bit where Mia comes out and says, no, you got to go get Letty. You're stronger together.
Yeah.
And I just remember the first time I watched this, like Paul Walker doing like deep thinking acting.
Yeah.
And I just remember going, this is like the film trying to have some emotional resonance and stuff and failing fucking dreadfully. Across the series, it does it really well. But this, you're a team, guys. You're family. It was just like, I kind of laughed out loud, I think, at this. But
It's moody acting, isn't it? It's like, try and do a hard sum in your head.
She's saying
Yeah, I was going to say, it's very much...
She's saying something not that profound, and he's thinking about it like she's just changed his whole worldview. And he is. He's trying to divide 212 by 13.
Yeah, it's the Jerry Tribbiani School of Acting.
Yeah.
We're pretty much like straight into London, really.
Straight into London with Dom looking out the window all moodily.
Yeah.
In kind of a vaguely golfing t-shirt. Yeah, they all turn up there, and he's like, "You got the best crew in the world now at your disposal."
Yeah. Give her a reason to stay.
I like the self-awareness of Tyrese saying, "Why can I smell baby oil?" And Dwayne Johnson's right behind him. And it makes me laugh when Dwayne Johnson makes jokes about Tyrese's forehead, and I'm thinking glass houses and all that. Given at least 3 men in this cast are completely fucking bald.
Yeah, it's about 30% of them, isn't it?
Well, the point is, it's like there's no I mean, your forehead is your forehead, but the fact is, there's no definitive end point to it if you're bald.
Yeah.
Right? Which he is. And actually, their actual foreheads, if they had full heads of hairs, Tyrese's is not that big. So anyway, doesn't matter.
I think it's quite fun. I think that line towards the end, I think that was ad-libbed, wasn't it? That was kind of just really spontaneous. So when you see Ludacris, like, spit out his beer or whatever, it was just like, I wasn't expecting that.
Real. It did look real, actually.
I think he just kind of made up on the spot, or they wrote in a line and he was like, "Oh, just ad-lib it, it's fine." So he just came out with this cracking line, and the rest of them were like, "What?"
Talking of people having the same role, both Han and Roman are constantly eating, and it's almost like different directors invented that joke, or different writers or whatever in different films, and now we've got both characters there, and they're both constantly eating.
Yeah, I think once, because he's got high metabolism, but with Han, I think it's because he's stopped smoking, or he's quitting smoking, something like that. So he's got to have that hand-to-mouth action. Vaping had not yet been invented.
Yeah.
Well, it obviously had, but,
Yeah, it wouldn't look that cool if he was, like, using one of those inhalators you could get from Nicorette or something. Fair enough.
We don't condone.
So, they get outlined the basics, which is that Hobbs is stealing a load of components that they think is going to be to create a nightshade device, which is kind of... There's something a little bit EMP about it, actually. It's not an EMP, but you can actually disable power in an entire region, which is what an EMP does, so it's GoldenEye. But he's not going to use it. He's going to sell it to the highest bidder, but that can sort of... I suppose he could be selling that to a terrorist.
Yeah.
And Letty's in with the crew. She's got amnesia. But we don't know that at this stage.
No. They're having, like, given a reason to stay. They pretty much say, well, we want immunity.
Effectively pardons. Yeah. He asks for something else towards the end of the film, which I thought was a sweet little touch, but at this stage it's pardons. He said, "I can't give that." He said, "You can." And he goes, "Yes, I can." So a thorough debate around the issues takes place.
I can't do that. Oh, go on. All right.
Yes, you can. Actually, now you put it that way.
I see your point.
Yeah. So where do we find out? Oh, the first thing is, I several times during this film I was like, I'm not quite sure. I'm not even sure why Hobbs needs this crew, because they've got a subordinate who is leading them to Shaw, and they've got a ton of police there. They don't know there's any deception going on. Hobbs could have just gone in and arrested him. again, it's more than 5. You've got to try not to think too hard about the constituent parts
No.
because it doesn't make any real sense.
I mean, it's kind of setting up Shaw as a villain, as like the kind of the person who is always one step ahead of everyone.
Yeah, by the standards of this series, he might be the smartest villain we've had so far.
So I think it's all set up. And you could say Hobbs is, yes, he's doing what he's doing, but he kind of like I expect him to this to not
If he
work.
busts out, yeah, I mean, basically for all the crew thing, the main attributes of this team is they're all superb drivers, and Shaw's team is very car based as well. So I guess there's that, and that is how it unfolds. It's a distraction because a load of alarms are going off at the Interpol offices because they're trying to steal something from there. I was never quite sure what. I'm assuming it's the opposing crew because he's got all the details on Dom and the rest of them at the end of all this.
Yeah.
So he's driving this kind of like, it's like a Meccano Batmobile.
Well, you know, it reminded me of the thing the ones you see on Robot Wars. You know, the good ones that just flip things over and think that always wins.
Yeah, it's really low center of gravity, very homemade feel to it, but a bit of a tanky sort of feel to it at the same time, even though it's really stripped down, which is why I said Meccano Batmobile, because that'll conjure up some sort of mixture of things in your mind. Think the Ben Affleck Batmobile with almost all the bodywork stripped off. Very, very low center of gravity, lower than the Tumbler. Yeah, he busts out killing the bloke. He gives him his money as a thank you for the distraction. Doesn't say what it is. He said, but the job we're doing right now, there's a bomb in it, which he detonates and which blows up the whole bloody thing anyway. Disables most of the police and leaves the crew to chase him. This chase goes on a very long time, doesn't it?
That's quite a long chase.
It's quite a lot of destruction in this one. I mean, I do think it's kind of also a thing to note is that, you know, with Shaw here, it does kind of set up his mentality as well. You know, the very first scene kind of like tells you everything you need to know about him. Like, you know, he's like talking about like, you know, spare parts and you know and things coming together, and when things go bad, you just replace them and everything works smoothly again. And this kind of like dynamic against Dom and Brian and all that lot, and they're sensitive to family and like, you know, on, you know, never leave a man behind, whereas Shaw's the opposite. He would like, no, happily leave someone behind.
Everything is secondary to the job.
Yeah.
But he's very respectful of skill sets, as we find at the end of this, because when they get the files, jumping forward a scene, when they get the files on the guys, one of them says, they're just petty criminals. Bear in mind, their files would say, stole DVD players. And he said, but they're petty criminals that came within like an ace of taking us down. So let's show them some respect.
Yeah, I think there was probably sort of sense that like they managed to sort of stay on us longer than anyone else has so far. So it'd be like, right.
I don't know that I've got a lot to say about the beats of this. This is where Dom does encounter Letty the first time, though, isn't it?
Yes, because she turns up and shoots him.
He gets out of the car. It's Letty. He doesn't know what's going on. She gets out and immediately shoots him.
Yeah, shoots him in the shoulder.
He recognises her driving because he noticed, because there's they're like chasing like, you know, Shaw and his crew, and then like there's a car. We don't see who it is, but
he's like, I recognise that. I mean, it's ridiculous, but in universe it works because ever since the first film, he's been saying, if I see how you drive, I know who you are. It's in the lore of this series, its driving styles are very much self-expression.
Yeah.
So, and it actually works in the dialogue as we go on when they're talking about scars. And I watched the start of the 7th film today, and there's a bit there about you need to do this, and it's like, that's not me to do this in a race. So, a bit far-fetched, but yes, it's Letty. And when he gets in front of her, she shoots him, and then I just thought of There was another bit that was like the Homer Simpson catching the bullet and throwing it back. It was a bit he operates on himself after this.
Yeah, it's like it's a typical action movie Hollywood. A shot in like in like the shoulder.
As long as it's not in your heart or your head, you can still operate as normal for a short period of time. I don't think you could go through the film without addressing it, but if there was another 4 or 5 minutes on the action sequence, you're all right.
Yeah.
And then if you're a bit of an outlaw and you're very muscular, you're good at like field surgery.
Yeah, it's like when you get shot, you act like you act as if you're shot until the point where you have the bullet removed, and then you have it patched up, and you limp a bit for the rest of the scene, and then
you're fine.
Yeah, he's fine. He never has any problems with this. I mean, bear in mind how debilitating bullets can be.
Yeah,
but the fact that he removes it
if
himself.
If we got shot in the shoulder, we'd never be the same again. We'd probably survive it.
No, you'd probably lose that arm. Well, not lose an arm, but you wouldn't be able to use your arm, would you?
Well, your muscles would be damaged and things like that.
Is it because he's secretly like a superhero or something? He's like,
I don't know.
Can heal super fast?
He pulls this bullet out, and it's like, Brian's immediately, what you've got there is such and such, which is from such and such gun. Like, all right, brilliant. Yeah. It's amazing how many hitmen sort of work with very, very rare weapons.
I mean, the thing I like about that bit with like Brian like sort of said, oh, it's such a okay, well, seeing as guns are illegal in the UK, can it be some at a pawn shop? So they find a pawn shop and then and ask a guy for information, and they tell him something that it was someone who looked like Letty. Well, great. What was that telling you? What was that telling you? What was the point?
It's a Hispanic lady. It's like, and there's only a few million.
We know.
Got some more information?
Yeah. Could you be more specific? Yeah. Yes. Now, so I've fill in a plot gap to me. It isn't a plot hole. I just can't remember. How do they find out that the villain from the fourth film is somebody Brian needs to go and?
That's later on with the garage guy when they're looking for and the guy name drops.
We do, in the midst of all this, we do get a bit of them fucking about at base and like fucking Roman nearly shooting.
God.
Just things that will come into play, like grappling hooks and all that we see at the end of the film. He very nearly shoots Dom. That joke's really telegraphed. I like Justin Lin, and I think he's a very talented filmmaker, but there was a way Dom was walking towards the camera, and we've not long seen them pissing around with something. I think something's about to come shooting through here in a minute. So we've got them all having to do little bits and pieces, haven't we?
We have Letty with Shaw. We kind of like see, so we kind of established that she's lost her memory, but is having kind of.
She's getting visions.
She
of exact shots from the fourth film. It turns out when she was shot, we find this out off. I'll come back to that because Ortiz fills this in later. Hobbs and Tej have to go and get cars, don't they?
Yes.
And they go to an auction that appears to be curated by Arnold Rimmer.
Oh dear. I was trying to think where I've seen him before. Obviously, it's not Arnold Rimmer, not Chris Barry. But yeah, he's one of those. He pops up in a few of those sort of things, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, it's a bit like Chris Barry's character in the first Tomb Raider film.
Yeah,
where he's like a butler. Yeah, it's very Chris Barry. Red Dwarf reference for anyone who's not seen it. Increasing numbers of our listeners have, because we mention it now and again. All played for comedy. Not bad. Fairly funny. I remember laughing in the cinema.
Mildly hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, we all kind of like, seeing a stuck-up getting his comeuppance.
It was It was actually. Maybe I'm just sensitive to this because of what's going on in the world at the moment, but it was bordering on racially way too insensitive. The way he spoke to the two of them.
Yeah, I thought I did cringe a little bit at that.
appeared to be saying there's no way two black men have got enough money for this unless you're like rappers or something and you're not wearing bling.
No, I did find the scene. I was like, really? You know, even though this film was, you know, it's made a few years ago, it's just like they wouldn't do that today.
I mean, yeah, there is an
I'm
element.
not saying I was offended. I'm not saying I was particularly offended by it, but you both get what I mean.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah, definitely.
I do and I don't. I mean, I do in the sense that there is obviously a little bit when you like assume and you're talking down to like someone who looks that part, like with your honeys or whatever.
Yeah, that was a bit.
I don't know,
but it's only really with Taj.
Yeah, that line as well, honeys. I don't know if I would have felt the same if you'd swapped out Dwayne for Vin. Do you know what I mean? If he talked down to them then, like, there's no way you've got enough money to buy these cars and only one of them's black, might be different. Don't know. It was just a little bit like, oh, that's a bit near the knuckle.
I mean, I can kind of maybe I just sort of saw what the guy was actually saying. I mean, he's been an arrogant twat, but it was just like saying, ooh, you obviously you're not dressed like you got money. Do you know what I mean?
Well, put it this way: it started off as there's no way you can buy these cars, and my mind immediately ran to because they're both black. Then he started to explain why, and I thought, oh well, this is going to improve matters, and it doesn't. It makes it worse because not so much with Dwayne, because he talks about him having a military bearing and his clothes being that's the sort of money they earn, but the stereotyping around Tej is very much like, oh, the only black people with money are these types of black people.
Yeah,
and that was like, you've actually not made it any better there. It's not that big a deal. It's one of those things that everything is, even things that weren't that many years ago, are something of a time capsule. It's only 7 years ago, but you just go, I hazard to guess they'd write that slightly differently now.
Yeah, things do change in a short space of time.
It's not like curry and chips or blackface. it's not.
Sorry,
bad, but it's just very slightly like. Yeah, I think things have slightly moved on since this.
Yeah, even in the space of 5 or 6 or 7, 8 years time, and it's just like it will change a little bit. I mean, I think there was another scene that was deleted because it was a little bit I don't know, misogynistic, for example. But
it's not to the point you'd have to edit this. It's not to the point that you'd have to bleep it or cut the scene out. I don't mean that. I just mean that I think there'd be slightly more awareness now that there's a slight insensitivity in the way that it's been written, and they've tried to get round it by having explain to them why they don't have enough money, and it actually doubles down on it in one case. It's not that big a deal. The scene itself's kind of all right. They end up humiliating by taking all his clothes, or most of his clothes, and sort of leaving him shorn of his dignity. It's fairly funny. It's all right.
Yeah, as you say, pompous man gets to come up. So
at the same time, Han, Roman, which isn't the most natural pairing, but okay, and then Riley and Giselle all head to this garage. That's here, isn't it?
Yeah. So they go car shopping. Yeah, they go to the car garage. Obviously they establish with the grappling hook, so they kind of work.
That's the thing. They've established how the car handled, and they sit having a conversation about how it's either got to be this type of hydraulics or magnetic or whatever, because it's the way it corners. So they're going around garages in London to find out who's done that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's established in dialogue by Riley when they get there that this is the 5th one they've been to. So the film was just cut straight to. They didn't look on the first one. They've been smart enough to go. They didn't immediately go with this one. Roman's about to go and just. Roman and Han are going to go down, and Roman's going to bullshit them, and Han's going to be charming. And actually, he just went, "It's a guy. We'll go." And they go down to talk to him, and basically, Gina's got a bit of cleavage on display anyway. So they go down to try and charm him.
Yes. Yeah.
He's
a man.
Yeah, because we're all that dumb. I mean, I am, but surely some of us aren't.
Surely.
I don't know, but you do kind of get mesmerised when someone flashes tits in your face. You go, Um,
I'm willing to do a controlled experiment. If you'd like to flash your tits at me, write to us at gmail.com.
yeah, be careful. You didn't specify which tits.
You might
Yeah,
be.
no,
You could
You
have
might have
like
an aviary.
you could have a
yeah,
man's
so you might have a
saggy
pair
tits
of,
here.
Blue tits.
So meanwhile, Dom and Brian go looking for that pawn shop that tells them nothing, and doesn't really advance the plot other than they just beat up a couple of guys in a.
It's really
in
silly.
London.
It's the film trying to be smart, and the script isn't as sharp as last week's. It just isn't, because this doesn't make a lot of sense. They're just trying to find out where things are, and they don't really find much out.
But they don't find anything out. It's like, well, what information did you get from it? Well, it's probably Letty. Well, it's Letty because she shot you point blank. So, what does that tell you?
I know. Well, we come to that with the whole Brian thing later. In a minute, it's not very far away at all now, but that whole thing's a waste of time. But we'll come to it. In character terms, it's probably not, but we'll come to it.
What else? Basically...
the guy at the garage manages to, make a call without it being seen. He's got an open line. So when Giselle's talking to him and saying, we just want to know about Shaw and all the rest of it, Shaw hears all that and sends, crew down there, including Letty, to shoot at them. And, of course, the guy gets caught in the crossfire, which is just completely self-defeating because he ends up with his dying breath giving them some information.
Tells him Braga.
Braga, that's it.
Who sent you?
Oh, he asked me 3 times, damn it. Yeah. Now, Braga was the bad guy in Fast 4, which 2 weeks on I'd sort of forgotten, to be honest, even though I enjoyed the film. I've sort of slept since then and watched loads of other stuff. I didn't get this at the time, but it doesn't matter in some respects, because they say, well, Braga, we need to know what happened there. So Brian calls in a favour from Shea Wiggum's character to go back into the United States, be arrested under a pseudonym, and go into prison for literally a night before they process the fingerprints and find out who he really is, and imprison him permanently. Be put in the prison he's in, and get alongside him so he can find out all this incredible information. And it's mental, because he flies back to the United States.
The mechanics of it. I just think, how does that work? How does that, how would you go under a pseudonym and then do something that will get you
into solitary? That's the thing. They get there and they find out that Braga's in solitary confinement. And
then once you're in solitary confinement, how do you sort of say, "Oh, it's all right, I'm letting him out now"? I don't understand. I don't understand how there's you go to prison for a period for a day.
The mechanics of why Shea Wiggum, they hated each other. He broke Shea Wiggum's nose. He seems to have only come back in this film to repeat that as a joke, because he's like, again? And as good as an actor as he is, he delivers that really badly. Just the wrong tone for it and everything. Because when they get in there, he's like, I could only get you this far. If you want to get next to Braga, you've got to cause some kind of scene. And he immediately beats him up. Sorry about this. But I think, why would he risk his career for him? He wasn't in 4 very much. And when he was in 4, you hated each other. He's a wanted man. It's just an unbelievable risk. Just on logistics, he flies from the United States from London, which is what? It's the far side as well. I don't know where in the United States it is, actually. Well, no, presumably if he was arrested in
let's
California,
say Arizona would be that kind of area.
Well, you're talking a 10-hour flight then, aren't you?
Yeah, I was thinking easily.
So you've got
10 hours.
You've got it's 7 or 8 hours to the East Coast.
This film's carbon footprint is huge.
So, but forgetting that, you've still got to how did it even work in time? He got over there, spent 1 night, came back, no jet lag, no problems. He's gone over there because they've got to find out this vital information about Letty. And what he finds out is Letty survived the shooting. Well, we know that. She's fucking alive right there. Shaw went in to kill her, and now she works for Shaw because... Why didn't he kill her? Because she has amnesia. Well, we know that because she didn't recognise Dom and shot him anyway. So having undertaken this top secret mission to go and find a load of shit out, all we get is Brian being given a bit of a guilt trip, and when he makes it back to the crew just in time to go to Spain, and he's like, "This is what I found out." Dom goes, "Whatever you learnt was for you."
No, but you also learned that Shaw will find you when he wants to find you. So
in other words, we've just basically got the plot point that Shaw's quite formidable. He's just evaded the entire UK police, the London police, killed a few of them, and evaded a crew that we've been following for several films and know are quite good at what they do. This whole plot point's a waste of time. It seems to be about literally just building up, giving us the exposition around Letty, which the character of Brian might want, but the plot doesn't need. Or even if the plot needs, these people don't need it at this point in the plot. The only salient information is Letty works for Shaw, but she doesn't know who she is. Okay?
Yeah.
Whether she knows she's called Letty, I don't know, because I can't remember if Shaw ever referred to her as Letty. We don't know what name she goes under, actually, because she's only ever referred to by our crew.
I think it is still
They are
Letty.
doing the whole amnesia storyline. We aren't told a lot about it. We don't know what she knows, what she doesn't know.
That's the point.
There are known knowns, there are known unknowns, things, one of those weird
right?
Johari window type things.
Him going into the prison serves us, the audience, because we get the flashback. And instead of shooting her, he shot the petrol tank. She was thrown down a bank, presumably hit her head, got amnesia, which is just a lazy, soapy plot device anyway. But they've gone with it, and that's fine. So this is exposition from the audience, but it's still got to have some relevance to the characters within the film. They've sent Brian halfway across the world, right, for one night. Put him in a prison that if it goes wrong, he won't get out of, to find out secret information that will aid their mission. What he finds out is Letty works for Shaw and she's got amnesia, and Shaw's quite formidable. We know all three of those things. Even if we didn't, when he gets back to the crew and is ready to tell them all he's learnt, Dom cuts him off and says, "That was for you." So they've sent him over, presumably to assuage his own guilt about playing Letty in the first place. But actually it just made him feel worse because he came back going, "Well, actually, her amnesia and all of this is my fault." So it's telling us, the audience, something, but it's actually very, very poorly written.
Well, yeah, it's just an excuse to go,
But it's
we'll have a
exhibit
scene
A.
there.
I mean, the dialogue is like Exhibit B, I suppose, in this film. But it's Exhibit A as to why last week was a better film.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
It's a narrative dead end.
I think this is probably why you feel like the movie drags, I think, in this area. It's up to this point, isn't it, where you're kind of going on unnecessarily...
I didn't have to... I guess with 5, I had to think about it to come to its problems, in that it doesn't have many problems, but they spend a lot of time planning one thing, and then at the end they have to go for a smash and grab. So you think, well, what was that all about? And you think, well, no, that's got its merits as well. Here, I'm having to ignore things. We're about to come to another one. I mean, at some point in this film, Shaw and Dom meet in like what looks like a car park, and Shaw could be about to take down Dom, but then he realizes there's like a laser sighter on his chest. Shaw is in the sights of Hobbs. And my first thought, even on first viewing, was, well, that's game over, isn't it? Why has the film got any fucking running time over this? This is logically a dead end, because they've got him. They've got him. If he's that dangerous, just fucking shoot him. Presumably dead or alive is fine. If it's not, you've got him at the end of a gun. And you could, if he tries anything, you can shoot him, because that's just resisting arrest. I hate using that term in the current context of what's going on in the world, but you know what I mean. And the scene itself, where they're stood having their "aren't we hard" talk, is long. So yeah, this film has some minor problems. They're fairly minor, but like last week didn't have any of this.
Yeah. I guess we got again. It's like one of those like we have to have like the the good guy and the bad guy like, have their moment. Like we're not
They
so
go around
different,
their
you
face.
and I.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. It also,
And all their dialogue is like one-liners. All of it. It is like a bit Die Another Day in that regard. It's a much better film than Die Another Day. Don't get me wrong, but it's all dropped off a little bit. Again, we're still in the peak era of the series. It's still superior to much of what we've had to date, but I now see, with 7 days removed from when we last recorded, why I thought 5 was better than this when I first saw 5. And having watched them really close together again, yeah, I stand by it. What's the next thing? So Brian manages to get out of prison. Letty is still being a little bit challenged over
because
whose side
obviously
will you be on.
one of the other men died, and there's little sense of loyalty with Shaw. He's like, oh well, you failed, pay the price. And
Yeah,
she's like,
but there's also there's a little bit of, are you going to be on our side? And of course she's now got the necklace,
yeah,
and she's got it from the street race with Dom. But it was also we haven't really talked about the street race, have we?
no, it's basically sort of Dom and Letty have a moment, really, isn't it?
Yeah, they turn up to a street race, which is once again all fit women dancing. And the race is
it's that kind of token scene, isn't it, pretty much?
I had to look it up because the race is started by Rita Ora.
Yeah.
Should have been Rihanna, but never mind.
Why wasn't it? Do you know? Or
No,
did you
I
just
don't
read
actually.
it?
I think she was busy. I think she was busy filming.
Oh, was it actually meant to be Rihanna?
Yes, yeah. I think there was some the schedules clashed. She couldn't make it. I can't remember what MV she was filming.
I mean, like I say, I put 7 on right after this, and that starts with something similar as well. Every time we cut to street racing, it's like fit women
It's,
dancing.
yeah, a bunch of sexy ladies. Ooh, God.
Not wearing a lot. The race is always started by a woman, and in 7, she's literally like shaking her ass a bit before she does it. It's kind of like it's the same as we've had for weeks. But they have a race through the streets of London. I think the race is done really well, particularly as the police are straight on them. I don't know how they managed to have a party in the street when they're about to have a street race, but they're driving around Piccadilly and fairly major landmarks in London.
Yeah. This is London, baby.
In London,
Yeah,
baby.
pretty much.
All the same stuff. Again, it's moved on from the earliest races where it was just a drag race. I mean, they actually...
I'm not sure where they're supposed to be going after this. It's like oh, you might get set, go, and they just drive off, and like, who knows what happens.
Yeah, the finish line, I do remember thinking, in the normal run of things, do they have to gingerly drive back evading the police and then say to them, and then when they get back, the organisers go, which one are you on then? Like, they drive off and you don't see them till they come back and have an argument over like who's claiming to have won and not. But they do have a conversation, and I like that conversation.
Yeah.
It's kind of tender. They have a chemistry. They're very close together. It's I know everything about you. This is where we do the scars bit.
Yeah.
I like that because it's just that they were childhood sweethearts. I don't know how that works on their relative ages, by the way, but they, certainly they were together from a young age. And every scar on her body, he knows the story. And they've taken some time to sit and think about that. And even to come up with this as a scene, I think is a really good idea. Because it's not like, you think of the third Indiana Jones film where we learn how he got the scar on the chin. That only ever came about because Harrison Ford has a real scar on his chin.
Yeah.
It's not like we've seen plenty of like Letty in like a top and some shorts and she just happens to have a few scars. And we're now going to retrospectively explain that. They've thought about this as a scene, and I just think it's a real tender bonding scene. But it also speaks to history because our history is in our scars and marks and stuff. I like it.
Yeah, so more like, I'll show you who you are, I'll show you who you are, I'll show you how you drive, that kind of thing.
Just because you know how I drive, and it's like, well, I know everything about you.
Well, yeah, the two are kind of intertwined. It's like she can read. This will sound really stupid, but like he can read her body like it's like a map of their relationship. For example, he can say, this is where this comes from. This is how you got that. This is why you have this scar, for example.
Yeah.
I know it sounds
Maybe
really
it's,
silly, but it's a
maybe
little
it's
bit
just
like
me
that.
as a softie. I think it's one of the better scenes in the series today.
Yeah, it was a really touching moment, and
Um,
it's got to cancel into weekend, and I thought it was really sorry, it was handled really sensitively. So
It stands out in a film of crap dialogue as well.
yeah, it's one of the most most loveliest scenes in the film.
I do like sort of it's a slight. It's not often you see Toretto, Vin Diesel being like a semi humble, but when he's like talking about like when we first met, it's like you nearly got you nearly got that scar from getting wiped out by stupid kids showing off. It's like, well, I was a stupid kid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It really, yeah, you have to sell how much he loves her, because I don't know how well this series was planned out, or these 3 films, but of course we thought she was dead. Now we know this series retrospectively, of course she wasn't, but you know what I mean. And he starts the film in bed with somebody else, and the person he was in bed with is really attractive as well. I mean, I know taste is subjective, but she's a very beautiful woman. And so we need to be reminded that they just have a history, and it's beyond physical attraction, and it's beyond relationships most of us have, because it spans a lifetime. I do think it's a really, really lovely scene. But he does he gives her back the necklace, which is the touchstone of their love story all the way through the series. And the key point is, I don't know what her feelings are when she goes back to Shaw, but she does say keep it to him, because it's like she's trying to show him that there's no emotional attachment, and clearly there is.
Yeah. Obviously, him and Shaw have a little, we're not so different, you and I.
I don't like that scene. It's funny. It's like a non-romantic version of the Letty scene, in that it's just 2 people quietly in like a shut-off area. But I don't like it.
I could reach out and break you. Your code is family.
It's just the film should end at this point. I mean, it's just not thought through. The person whose job it is to bring him in has him in his sights. And the main thing is, what they're trying to put together is really dangerous. So at a push, you would kill him. I'm not saying you just sniper him just like that, but like if you have any problems with taking him in, or he makes a move on Dom, you have him in your sights. So again, it's just a few logical fallacies.
So you just be like, all right,
I don't know. I just
can
wonder
die.
if this film. I mean, it is 2 years on from the last film, but I do wonder if this film might have benefited from an extra year. There's just a few little bits in it where you think another draft of the script you might have picked
Dom
up.
didn't know Hobbs was there anyway, because I think Hobbs must have like tracked him, and then it's like once
Yeah, but
the
Hobbs knows Hobbs is there.
Well, I know, but it's I think again it's like it was that thing about developing trust between the two, and I don't think Hobbs wouldn't sort of necessarily just let Dom die for the sake of just killing Shaw. Do you know what I mean? It wouldn't go against.
I mean, you've literally got the gun on him. I don't see how we end up. I don't see the in-universe logic. I understand why the film carries on after this, but anyway. So Brian gets back, and then the next point is Tej, who's now the computer genius in the Western world, has tracked Shaw to Spain, and it's going to be like an attack on a military convoy or something like that, isn't it? So they all head to Spain.
Brian gets back. Oh, keep your bags packed, Brian. We're going to Spain. He must be jet lagged to fuck, yeah.
Yeah. And he hasn't had like a shave, a shower, or anything.
When he sleeps, yeah.
Stinks.
Can you imagine the cramp and the sweat and the sweat marks on the groin? Jeez.
They think it's an attack on a base. It actually turns out to be the convoy, and it's a computer chip they need to complete this device.
A MacGuffin.
Yeah,
it's a bit of MacGuffin style, isn't it?
So, they steal a tank. That Letty and Shaw are in a tank, and they're basically. Well, it ends up with them driving the wrong way down a motorway, just running over cars, and there's no doubt they are killing people by the dozen. Because they're just absolutely flattening cars.
It starts off like, we're going to attack the base, so we're going to sort of like move the place, which thinking about anyone who knows security would think, hang on, no, surely this is a stupid idea. Because you're instantly making it a lot more vulnerable.
Yes.
Which makes you think, oh, hang on, maybe this was the idea in the first place.
Yeah. But it ends up with this long chase on a highway. Lots of like family type dialogue in that, we all trust each other, we improvise, and all the rest of it.
He got a tank.
Yeah,
They got a tank.
I love
Roman and Tej got on my tits in this scene.
I did love how Tej delivered that line, because he kind of like, he says it with a kind of like amazed, but also just like,
what?
Just in a kind of amazing and kind of upset.
They could just stop the convoy with like, but they can't because it's a tank.
Because they got a tank.
And they try and hook cars to it and stuff like that. I mean, it's quite tense. His car nearly gets destroyed. We've seen them run over several things. So, as visual storytelling, we know the stakes. So, what do we want to say about this? They end up with... That tank ends up dragging along what's left of Roman's car.
Yeah.
And everybody else's car that ends up in its wake.
And, yeah... That car, I can't remember. What does Paul Walker does something to get that car?
Brian basically, he kind of like he basically sort of drives up to it and kind of knocks it over the end of the bridge, so it would kind of
and then eventually it catches and like jackknifes the tank. Letty was out of the tank to sort the cord to unhook that car. I don't know how easy that would have been at that speed, but there you go. And so she's tossed into the air. Dom has seen this. He's already climbing out of his car, and he throws himself through the air across the freeway, catches her, turns, and lands back first on the windshield of a car. And they're both fine.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of this, because... ridiculous, it seems a redundant thing to throw at this series at this point, and I kind of like the whole sequence, so it was all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a good action scene. I mean, ridiculous but good action scene. Which constantly thinking, well, Tej is just sat on a bridge for the entire bit.
I know, he's just stood watching. But again, they've thought about giving everybody something to do. We haven't mentioned Han and Giselle, but they're there, and they hijack a car quite well out of speed.
Yeah.
But Shaw has had Mia kidnapped.
Ooh, that sneaky bastard.
Yeah, he's a sneaky git, isn't he?
Yeah, they nearly got away because Elena was with her. Elena got away with the kid, and she didn't. That doesn't sound good if you've not seen the film, but if you actually see the sequence, it's not like Elena just ran off with the kid and sod you.
Yeah, I was going to say, that out of context, that does sound a bit...
No, but Elena was trying to rescue them, and
yeah.
Mia
I think the plan was to get all three, wasn't it, really, you think?
Yeah. So, because they're a family, and they're not going to risk her, they have to kind of let Shaw go. Riley goes off with them. Because she's a double agent.
I love the line of dialogue. She said, like, and Hobbs says, if you let him go, things like amnesty goes out the door. And I can't remember, trying to remember the line Diesel says. Like,
he says something like, it was gone the day we were born. It was just a bad line.
And that was just like...
Yeah, a dodgy line.
Yeah, and that was just like sums up like all the dialogue in this film, really. It's just constantly trying to find like this big kind of like hard, meaningful thing to say.
I mean, I've seen it in several films, but that line where it was like I was born ready. But the film, I really like it, and I don't like the film very much, but Ocean's 12, when Terry Benedict says it, and George Clooney just rolls his eyes at it. He's just like, Christ.
Oh, no, I think that's the third one.
We're going to have to add that series to our list, aren't we, I think?
I think that's the third film.
All right, okay. It is. Yeah, I was born ready.
Born ready.
Albert Finney has a similar line in Skyfall, and I hated it there as well.
Oh, it's such a cheesy line. It's very hackneyed. You just think, oh,
It's
really?
just like I can picture someone writing it because sometimes you get too close to material
Yeah,
and
it's a bit of a
you
filler.
lose objectivity. But all these things get checked, read. Producers, directors look at it. And I just think the first thing you do is get rid of that line, or just change it to something a little bit less on the nose, like, well, that's always been the way for us, or something like that.
Just try and stop me, you little shit.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. You jumped on little shit.
Yeah, so they basically got to get onto this plane to fly off. Mia's on the plane.
Yeah.
Shaw drives like his whatever it is truck onto it. So they've now got to chase this plane to stop it taking off. And basically, the plane lands because they're driving. He's driving along Shaw on a runway. And they're going, well, where's he going? But a plane comes in to land and he drives onto the plane. This is quite a long runway.
Yeah, I
No
know.
old runway.
Well, I did a time check on the version I was watching anyway. And from the moment the plane lands to the moment it crashes is 12.5 minutes. If we say conservatively that plane was doing 100 miles an hour, that means the plane travelled something like 21 miles. And that's not adding the bit that they walk beyond it at the end, and there's a bit of driving before the plane even lands. So it's not unreasonable to suggest that runway is at least 23 miles long. It's a really tense sequence, but I mean, I didn't switch that off because I remember watching this the first time and I leant into the friend I was with and went, how long is this fucking runway?
It goes on forever and ever and ever. Amen.
I never had an issue with it. Now, maybe it's just my penchant for, shitty action movies that make no logical sense. But I just thought, you know what, the runway is however long it needs to be.
It didn't stop me enjoying the film.
Yeah.
They paced it really well. They had everyone doing something. They put people in peril. There's a lot of positive things to say about all of this. It's been actually very well managed. But it's only the fact that all of these things get looked at, checked, read, edited, and everything else. And I just think, how knowing are they on this stuff? Is it one of these they go, yeah, we'll give the audience a bit of a laugh, or it doesn't matter, or come on, we're all a bit, we know this series has its silly moments. Or is there an essential laziness at the heart of this, which I'm less inclined to forgive? Because you just think it's not that hard to like. I mean, it's not like you're adapting something existing that was ridiculous. You've written this from scratch. You've chosen to put yourself into this situation. It's a bit like when we talked about The Rise of Skywalker. They put the ticking clock of 12 hours on, or 18 hours, or whatever, 16 hours, I think it was, or whatever it was, and then backed themselves into a corner where suddenly it's like, well, that logically would have to be done in an hour, and that's impossible. I've mentioned Die Another Day a couple of times tonight. Gustav Graves being knighted in 14 months from having been like a fucking Korean colonel. This is a box you voluntarily backed into, and I don't want to be that hard on it because I like this sequence, and there's something about the silliness of this series I kind of enjoy as well. But at the same time, if this is the result of laziness, I just think, well, like, why did you put yourself in that position?
I think my personal feeling is I think it's knowing what that it is stupid, but it's just kind of.
I tend to think it's knowing, but is it knowing, thinking the audience won't notice, i.e. Are they looking down their nose at the audience, or it's a bunch of meathead teenagers will come and watch this, or are they having a little wink with us? I
think it's one of the things. If you're thinking about how long the runway is, not necessarily if you think, but if how long the runway is, if it is an issue for you, then the series is just not for you. I think it's that kind of thing. It's just like, well, It's Flights of Fancy, isn't it? And I think
Well,
they
it was
kind
the
of
first
go
one I
with.
saw, and I loved it. I had a great time with it. All the flaws I've said tonight, I recognised at the time, but it wasn't a deal breaker. It was like, okay, that's fine. But I noticed it. I noticed it on first viewing. I mean, I leant in and thought, like, what the fuck's this? But I still come out going, that was a laugh. I enjoyed it. Yeah, so, I don't know. The fight scenes are kind of fun, because it starts off with Vin Diesel fighting a very roided guy. And as soon as like Dwayne Johnson turns up, they reorganise so Vin Diesel fights the slightly smaller guy. And he has no less of a problem with Shaw than he had with this massive bodybuilder. But they do actually edit it all very nicely. The fist fights are quite tense. We're cutting to outside. You know, they're trying to pit on the bloody plane, and they end up like Tej and Roman slightly miss and end up like being lifted up. Giselle gives her life to save Han because he's about to be shot behind. She has to let go of the plane to fire. I mean, this is a masterpiece of editing work.
Yeah, I mean, also, but it ends with Vin Diesel driving out the front of a car, driving a car out of front of a plane as it's exploding, which was in the trailer, but it was
pretty obvious. It was pretty clear to me he'd survive, to be fair. But it was one of those where you expect him to burst out to like the Bond theme. That's where the Bond theme would kick in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But the score in this film just did not stand out at all.
No, I kind of felt a bit bad, really. I was kind of thought, this classic moment, we really could have done with that kind of Brian Tyler, that kind of really signature sound. I think, or like a little loss on the main theme, for example.
You need someone a bit more triumphant at this point.
You do, yeah. You want a real
need
kind of
a
to re-cement that moment.
You actually need a tease of it, and then it drops away immediately because we immediately think Vin's in trouble.
Yeah.
So. And then he walks.
I mean,
out.
the music is adequate. I would say, Everyone Was Along is a good vibe created about the film, but it's just we're missing that kind of.
It's not bad on the
highway
sequence. It's not bad on the highway sequence. It's the only place it's.
No, that's really cool. It drives everything along, and there's not. Sounds really silly. I don't think there's too much of it, because sometimes I remember I watched Scorpion King randomly when that came out, and again it's one of those things where the score is very lush, very beautiful, but there's just too much of it. It's too much music, if that makes sense.
The Rock's in that as well.
If that I'm not tarring him with the same brush.
Mind you, back then he wasn't.
He does a brilliant performance in that for sure. But I just kind of came away thinking of that one. There's a bit too much music, but good movie.
Yeah. No, all I thought was he wasn't as big back then. He was more like the Pebble. But that's it really. They've got what they needed. They managed to recover the suitcase with the chip in it.
Han looks gutted.
Han's gutted because Giselle's dead. So Han's not as cool in this film as the last one, but it's still the moment she lets go is quite a shock. Actually, I was shocked at the time. So yeah, they get their pardons. They said, "What? Name your price," and he says, "What is the number? 1437." He says, doesn't he?
It's the house number.
1437. He says, "Name your number." Yeah, it's the number of the house. So basically, they're not only pardoned, he gets his house back, and next thing they're back there. It looks like Brian and Mia are going to live virtually next door, which is cool because they can have little assignations. They're not.
That's convenient.
Well, it's convenient for those two, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're back having a barbecue. Shaw turns up with a newly reinstated Elena, which is just bizarre. And she's like, "Well, I'm with," and then Letty goes up to her and says, "Thanks for everything you did for him." And I was just thinking,
and Dom actually sort of says, "You don't have to go."
It's like, that's going to be awkward. I'm sorry. I know some people are quite mature about exes and stuff like that, but no, let her go. But yeah, thanks for everything you did for him. What? What does she do for him that you won't do? Anyway, so they're all very grown up about it. Yeah, that's what I thought, to be honest. Because he's bound to do blowjobs, right? Yeah. Anyway, don't know. Perhaps we can write to Universal Films. If you know whether Letty gives blowjobs, write to us at expectedtalk@gmail.com. They have a barbecue, say a prayer, say grace where they finish off thanking fast cars. Dwayne and Vin have quite a homoerotic moment where they stand next to each other with.
But without actually looking each other in the eye.
Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to do like the forced perspective you get in like the Tolkien films, but the camera's at the wrong angle. Till next time, I never thought I'd trust a thief. Till next time, Toretto. Till next time.
That scene, I laughed out loud. I just kind of found it like unintentionally funny.
Yeah.
I just thought, oh, so cheesy.
I just think it could only be more homoerotic if, like, he re-baby oiled him while they were having a
Yeah.
chat. But happy endings all round. Not that type of happy ending. And they're back in the United States. They've got their car. They've got their home back. Their family. Elena's been reinstated despite having been on the run with the wanted criminal. Letty's delighted Elena gave Dom anal credits.
And then we see Han die again.
Yeah, Han's going back to Japan. They agreed they were going to go back to Japan before Giselle died. So he goes out there anyway. He says something about it wanting to do. We see the end sequence, or an edited version of the end sequence of Tokyo Drift. I say edited because we don't see Lucas Black. And when he's killed, suddenly there's a phone call to Dom, and it's like, Dominic Toretto.
That is what he sounds like.
Yeah.
You don't know me. You
But
soon
you're
will.
about to.
You're about to, sucker.
And we're going to find out in the next film. That's Deckard Shaw. That's
Yeah.
sorry.
Willard Shaw.
Who turns out to be a bloody nice bloke.
Willard Shaw.
Because that's just how this series is.
Delightful fellow.
Well. It turns out in the film following that Owen Shaw isn't that bad, really.
Yeah, they're both not bad, and he's magic with a baby. That is a brilliant sequence, I have to say, in Fast 8. Anyway, final thoughts from me. Very, very short, because I've said it all the way through, so I'm just going to say it one more time. Dialogue's weaker. The plotting goes down some blind alleys. There's bits we don't need in this film, and there's points where you have to actively try not to think about that bit because it doesn't work. Action's really good. It does land its emotional beats. This is a good crew. They have good chemistry, and the filmmakers know what they want from each member of this crew, which is going to lessen a bit in future weeks. So we're still in the sweet spot, but it's a small step down from last week.
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, the only thing I will add is like the movies got getting a bit dumber from last week, but the action's been ramped up. So it's very much more of an action movie focused film rather than like a heist or car chase type. The cast are all great, all gelled together. I think it's it says something how they all bond really well. Like for you, Dave, it was the first time you saw it, and it felt like they've been together for ages. Also got a little bit credit to Luke Evans. He did actually a good job as a villain.
Yeah, he's probably one of
he's
the
quite good, isn't
standouts
he, I
in the
think?
series.
From the trailer,
quite credible.
With the trailer, you look at him and think like, I can't see him as a villain. He seems pretty much like whatever, but he's a good actor, Luke Evans. He did a really good job this time around. So yeah, I think that also brings something, because I think one of the things the franchise has been lacking is a decent villain.
It's been piss weak. I mean, I from week to week, I can't remember what last week's villain was. I mean, I spoke fairly highly of 4 relative to its reputation, but 2 weeks on, when they mentioned Braga, I'm thinking, I recognise that name. Look it up. Then I have to look the actor up and go, oh, was that Fast 2 or 4? Oh, it was 4, wasn't it? Yeah, you know what I mean. You just forget him from week to week. They're not standouts. So if there's anything that this is a step up, is from last week, is the villain, yeah.
No, definitely. I would kind of agree with you guys, really. I would kind of feel that last week was definitely like the heist movie, but this time this is more, as you say, kind of more ramped up action movie for sure. Script perhaps a little bit weaker, but action definitely wrapped up 100%, dialed all the way up to 11. Love the fact that the tank chase was done, in real time. Obviously, a little bit of CGI tweaking here and there, but it wasn't too obvious, and the effects were done really smoothly. As again, it's kind of said that these kind of middle films have kind of seen a real ramping up in terms of the audacity of the stunts. It's not just about the cars; it's more about family. It's more about the family of and relationship and dynamics between Toretto and his team. because I mean, here in this film, you've got him and Stacey, two fairly big British names, definitely. And obviously Rita Ora with a cameo role. But they're kind of, if you want somebody, in that kind of role or kind of villain role, for example, then they're the two that you'd probably call it at the moment. They're kind of fairly hot. I think you've got the two kind of going head to head almost, trying to share the same space. Is really interesting as well. But yeah, I would agree with you in that Evans does, prove himself. He's a generally capable actor. Always brings 100% to the role, but here he proves himself to be quite a memorable villain.
I think the one thing I'd just add is that you can read between the lines and be damning the series with faint praise in that we've talked about it being enjoyable, but then we say the dialogue's poor or the script's a bit dumb or whatever. But we talked about the Dom Letty scene. And whilst I was nowhere near tears or anything like that, I found it quite moving. I thought it was like well done and a well conceived scene. Compare that to like some of the B movie actioners out there. I mean, look at the Taken series, where they tried to like have scenes of another Brian, with like his family and his daughter doing driving tests and him having barbecues with his friends and stuff like that. And none of it landed. It always felt like busy work, like, well, we've got to give him some sort of personal life for this film to have any stakes whatsoever. If they could have avoided all of that, you feel like they would have done. So many films just go through the motions on the family bits and the friends bits and the personal bits. They do it, but they do it with no commitment. And I do genuinely believe that the people involved in making these films, and specifically Vin Diesel, actually care about these characters and they mind the emotional subject matter as much as it seems like a series of linked stunts. So it's got more heart than brains, but it's got so much heart.
But all the heart it has, I actually know nothing about it.
Well, that was the only thing earlier. I was a bit embarrassed actually because I left it quite late to watch this film, and so it was early evening on the day of the recording, and it finished, and I thought, oh my god, I don't know anything about this. This is going to be embarrassing.
Yes, because
I thought, but what I can do is I can read up about this, and at the start of the record, well, before we record, we can get online, the three of us, and before we record, we can thrash this out, learn everything we need to learn, and then record a very well-informed show. And why didn't we do that?
I guess we were just expecting Becca to give us some fun facts.
That'd be easier, actually. Yeah, fuck it. Let's just do fuck all.
Let's just screw
Becca. So, right, Becca.
Any facts that you can find on the Tinterweb in your place? Yeah, I couldn't find too much about this film, so they're all a bit higgledy-piggledy, I'm afraid. So yeah, as we mentioned off air, obviously the final section of this film, I think it was, what did you say, like 12 and a half minutes, Dave? It features an epic battle of cars versus plane on a seemingly never-ending runway. But how long is it? Dave, you said you did the maths. And you conservative estimates 20 points.
I looked up the thing. I was interested because they reach takeoff speed at one point, and I thought, well, what is takeoff speed then? And it does vary by plane, but they say sort of big commercial airliners, and this is a fairly sizable plane. It tends to be around 150 miles an hour. It can be a bit more than that. It could be up to about 179, but it's in that range. So I thought, well, it's got to be a bit slower than that for most of the time. Some lighter aircrafts are only like 70 or whatever. And if you fly planes or know anything about planes, apologies if we're completely wrong. This was like a 2-minute search just to get some idea. So I thought, well, cars are keeping up, but they're having to peg it. So I thought, let's just assume it's about 100 miles an hour. That's probably an underestimate. But let's just say it was 100 miles an hour. Well, at 12 and a half minutes from the moment it lands to the moment it crashes, or the crashing ends, if you like, that would make it a shade under 21 miles. You've then got the fact that they were driving in cars before it landed, and they are some way ahead of the crash site when they finish. So that is a sizable runway under any measure you take. But it almost doesn't matter what speed you put it at, because even if you said 50 miles an hour, which is unlikely, it would still be fucking 10 miles long, wouldn't it? Which is, runways are not that long. So there you go. Particularly the funny thing is that the whole sequence starts with an establishing shot of the runway. So we actually see it's not that long.
No.
So there you go. So
you're about 20 odd miles.
20 odd mile runway.
BBC says 18 miles. There's a website called Aviation Pro. They say 28 miles.
There is a director's cut of this film, and I had a rip. And the thing about the rip was, I whoever put this together, the volume, the audio would go out of sync with the film, and I think that was because they had to keep re-looping. I think they only had the audio to the theatrical, and they had to like re-loop bits to catch up to the images which were from the director's cut. And one of those looping errors happened during that sequence, suggesting that there's a few more seconds in the director's cut, so that 18 miles might just be that the theatrical version is very slightly slower. Slightly shorter. So yeah, I've 18, 20, 22 miles, somewhere in that range.
So I didn't know there was even a director's cut of this movie.
It's 1 minute longer, literally.
All right.
Well, it wasn't until, because you kind of gave me the Blu-ray, it wasn't until I watched it and I was like, oh, I didn't know. So
if the version you're looking at is 2 hours 10 minutes, you got theatrical. If you're looking at 2:11, you got directors. But it is literally like
a minute.
it's literally like the odd added shot here and there, a little extension of scenes here and there, and like a tiny bit of dialogue cut here and there. They're almost identical experiences. I haven't commented on anything remarkably different than had I seen whatever the other version was.
Yeah.
It seems like there's like a few scenes here and there, and there's nothing too substantial.
Really nothing substantive at all. It just isn't.
It's not like Blade Runner, where there's always different meanings that to be found.
It got cut for pacing anyway. Even something like The Wrath of Khan has an extra few minutes. This is like 64 seconds or something like that. I did share it with Becca earlier, where there's a couple of different shots employed, but it's nothing different. But the clue that this had been cobbled together was that the audio didn't always quite match what I was seeing. And sometimes you'd hear a bit of an audio and then they'd repeat it. And there was one of them during the plane bit. So I imagine there's an extra bit on the plane version I saw. So I'm saying 12 and a half minutes. It might have been like a minute shorter, or that might be where some of the extra is.
I couldn't find out how long it is, but apparently the world's longest publicly used paved runway is, I'm not going to pronounce this properly, Camdo Banda in China. So that's quite interesting to know. Fun fact number 2, Rita Ora, who plays the leader of the girl racers, obviously who was meant to be Rihanna, can be heard on Iggy Azalea's song Black Widow, and Azalea later pops up in Furious 7, so we'll see her coming soon.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but then I've only seen the 7th film once. I saw it in cinemas, and that was it.
Again, yeah, she has that kind of literally blink and you miss it cameo, really. Fun fact number 3, this is so far, until next time, the only Fast and Furious movie with a May release. Fun fact number 4, there's a lot of, once they get to London, there's a lot of comments made about how CCTV is everywhere. So it's estimated there are about 25 million CCTV cameras globally, with Britain having a high percentage of these, with around 4 million. So it's kind of like...
That did resonate early in the film when he said...
Yeah, I was quite surprised. I was like, really?
When he said the last place is, is London because this place is really surveilled, I'm like, yeah, we are one of the most watched places in the world.
Yeah, we've got like the highest amount of CCTV activity in Europe, apparently.
By a distance, yeah.
Yeah, and according to the official CCTV website, as of 2020, I think March 2020, there's one CCTV... I can't even say it. One CCTV camera for about 14 people. So this is a pretty Patelman coming up, so please bear with me. 627,707 cameras in London alone. So I think that's mind-boggling. That is, so basically you will end up somewhere. If you come to the city, chances are you will be on CCTV, whether you like it or not. So we'll see you. And obviously, sad, not a very fun fact. Paul Walker's last film in the franchise, who sadly passed away in November.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week, because it does. I mean, I won't be watching any extras around 7, but I have heard commentaries and stuff and seen things in the past, and so many of the scenes he's in 7 are cobbled together from something else, and CG changed things, and he'll be sat on a chair somewhere, and he wasn't actually there, but he was sat on another chair at some point, and they've moved it.
Or it might be like his cousin or relative who looks similar. And
towards the end of the film, it's really obvious he's playing on the beach with his kid, and that's not him, that's his brothers. You can tell. The final homoerotic shot of the film is not him either. That's all like created digitally. It's really sad what happened, because he
I'll be
wasn't
listening to See You Again and be like, oh.
Yeah,
With a
I
tissue.
don't remember getting particularly emotional about it, but at the time, but it compromised the film. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, you're trying to cobble things together. He'd obviously shot quite a lot, but even shots that look seamless, and you go, well, at least they had him for that scene. When you actually listen to a commentary, which I must have done at some point, or seen some special feature on it, I thought I'd only seen it once, but how would I have? Because I don't remember buying it. But however it was, I saw something where they showed some scene where he was sat by a pool or something, and they said he's not there. That's not actually happening. There's a phone call between him and Mia in the film, and it was shot a year apart. Sorry, you know, she was saying what an emotional scene it was to film for her, because she was talking to somebody who died a year before. But there you go. So. But yeah, so that's next week. We'll talk about that film, because it's a lot of people's favourites, but it's a compromised product. It's bigger again. The cast is bigger again. We meet Kurt Russell next week.
Kurt Russell always makes things better.
I don't think we meet Scott Eastwood till the week after, unless he's got a small part next week.
No.
Anyway, so as for social media, you can find me at the Pastor Kid 1976 on Twitter.
You can find me at Cinecharts on Twitter. You can also find all the old episodes at cinecharts.co.uk.
And you can always find us, Do You Expect to Talk, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, and wherever you pick up your podcasts. And whilst you're on that platform of choice, don't forget to rate us, review us, to like us, and share us. Thank you very much.
Just to whet everybody's appetite for next week then, just before Becca announces it, a quote from Vin Diesel before this film was released. Universal is going to have the biggest movie in history with this movie. It will probably win Best Picture at the Oscars, unless the Oscars don't want to be relevant ever. This will win Best Picture. There is nothing that will ever come close to the power of this thing, which means Becca.
Do You Expect to Talk will return with Fast and Furious 7, aka Furious 7.